When most people think of Niccolo Machiavelli, they picture political intrigue, calculated strategy, and ruthless ambition. The prince sits on dusty shelves as a manual for power, not passion. Yet, hidden within his observations about human nature lies something unexpected, something that reveals profound truths about how men behave when they're genuinely, deeply in love. Because Machiavelli understood something essential that few recognize. Authentic love strips away pretense, and in the bedroom, when defenses dissolve completely, a man's true feelings become impossible to hide. The bedroom represents the ultimate proving ground for genuine emotion. It's where performance anxiety meets vulnerability, where ego confronts tenderness, where the mask we wear in daily life simply cannot survive. Machiavelli taught that actions reveal truth far more reliably than words ever could. In the intimate darkness between two people, when physical closeness becomes emotional nakedness, certain behaviors emerge that simply cannot be faked over time. These aren't grand gestures or rehearsed performances. They're subtle, consistent patterns that distinguish deep love from mere attraction or temporary infatuation. The first thing a man does differently in bed when deeply in love often surprises people because it contradicts popular assumptions about male sexuality. He slows down, not just occasionally, but consistently. Machiavelli observed that power seekers rush toward conquest, while those who genuinely value something approach it with reverence. A man experiencing superficial attraction tends to race towards satisfaction, viewing the bedroom as a destination to reach. But when deep love transforms his perspective, something fundamental shifts. The journey itself becomes precious. He lingers in moments that others might skip past. His kisses become longer, more exploratory, as if he's trying to memorize the exact texture of your lips. His hands move with deliberate slowness, not from technique learned in some article, but from genuine desire to experience every sensation fully. This deceleration manifests in countless small ways that accumulate into something unmistakable. He pauses to look at you, really look, making eye contact that extends beyond what feels initially comfortable. Where casual encounters involve closed eyes and internal fantasy, deep love demands presence. He wants to see your reactions, to witness the exact moment pleasure registers on your face, to understand what makes you gasp or sigh or grip the sheets. This isn't about gathering data for better performance. It's about the fundamental human need to be truly seen by the person we love, and to truly see them in return. Machiavelli understood that observation precedes understanding, and understanding precedes genuine connection. The man who rushes through intimacy reveals that he's still fundamentally alone, even while physically connected to another person. The second behavior that emerges involves something that might seem trivial but carries enormous significance. When a man is deeply in love, he becomes genuinely concerned with your comfort in ways that extend beyond basic courtesy. Machiavelli noted that self-interested actors perform generosity only when observed, but true care manifests even in private moments, when there's no audience to impress. In the bedroom, this translates to consistent attention to details that seem minor but create the foundation of genuine intimacy. He adjusts pillows without being asked. He checks if you're too hot or too cold. He notices if something causes discomfort and immediately stops to address it. Even when doing so, interrupts his own pleasure. This behavior pattern reveals something crucial about his emotional state. Physical comfort becomes emotionally significant because he's psychologically unable to separate your well-being from his own satisfaction. Where attraction might generate temporary concern for consent and basic respect, deep love creates something different entirely. Your comfort becomes his comfort, your pleasure becomes inseparable from his. This isn't performed altruism or strategic niceness designed to earn future rewards. It's the natural outcome of emotional boundaries dissolving to the point where causing you discomfort would genuinely distress him. He readjusts your position not because he read that he should, but because seeing you uncomfortable creates immediate tension in his own body that he needs to resolve. Machiavelli taught that we should judge people by patterns, not isolated incidents. Any man can be considerate occasionally, especially early in a relationship when he's still trying to impress. But the man who consistently prioritizes your comfort, who does so even when exhausted, even when completely absorbed in sensation, even when you haven't said anything is wrong, That man has transcended performance. He's operating from a psychological space where your needs have become integrated into his own awareness so thoroughly that attending to them requires no conscious effort. He simply cannot relax himself unless he knows you're comfortable first. The third distinctive behavior involves communication, but not in the way most relationship advice suggests. When deeply in love, men don't just communicate more during intimacy, they communicate differently. Machiavelli observed that those seeking to manipulate use language as a tool for specific outcomes, while those operating from genuine feeling speak with unguarded honesty that sometimes surprises even themselves. In bed, when defenses crumble and vulnerability peaks, the deeply loving man says things he might never articulate in daylight. Not rehearsed compliments or strategic affirmations, but raw observations that escape almost involuntarily. He murmurs about how beautiful you look in that exact moment, with messy hair and no makeup, probably because he's genuinely overwhelmed by the sight of you lost in sensation. He whispers confessions about how he thought about you all day, how he couldn't focus during meetings, how seeing you waiting for him made his chest tighten. These aren't calculated to create specific reactions. They emerge from the same unfiltered place that produces gasps and moans, verbal manifestations of internal experience that bypass its usual filters. The man who remains silent during intimacy, or who only speaks in commands and requests, reveals that he's still maintaining control, still directing a performance, still fundamentally separate even while physically joined. But communication goes beyond words. The deeply loving man creates space for you to communicate your needs without fear of judgment or rejection. Machiavelli understood that true power involves creating environments where others feel safe enough to reveal their authentic selves. In intimate contexts, this translates to a man who actively encourages you to express preferences, who responds to guidance with enthusiasm rather than wounded ego, who treats your verbal direction as a gift rather than criticism. He asks what feels good not as a formula to follow, but because your experience genuinely matters more to him than protecting his image as someone who should already know everything. This pattern of communication reveals psychological security that only deep love creates. Superficial connections generate defensiveness because ego remains paramount. The man who reacts negatively to gentle guidance or constructive feedback in bed reveals that he's still performing for an internal audience, still trying to prove something to himself or meet some imagined standard. But deep love dissolves that defensive posture entirely. He wants to learn your specific preferences because you matter more than his pride. He encourages honest communication because your satisfaction has become genuinely more important than his fantasy of effortless expertise. The fourth behavior centers on something that might seem paradoxical at first. When men are deeply in love, they become more playful in the bedroom, not less. Machiavelli noted that those consumed by ambition remain perpetually serious, while those who feel secure can afford to laugh. Sexual intimacy often carries tremendous pressure, especially for men who internalize cultural messages about performance and prowess. But deep love creates a safety that transforms the bedroom from a test to be passed into a playground to be enjoyed. He laughs when something awkward happens instead of becoming tense. He makes gentle jokes that ease moments of nervousness. He suggests trying something new with enthusiasm rather than anxiety about getting it perfectly right. This playfulness manifests in spontaneous behavior that reveals comfort and trust. He might tickle you unexpectedly, or make a silly face to make you smile, or suddenly shift to a completely different approach just to see your surprised reaction. Where casual encounters often feel choreographed by invisible expectations, deep love permits improvisation. He feels free to be goofy, to experiment without fear of judgment, to prioritize connection and joy over impressive performance. Machiavelli understood that true power involves the freedom to act authentically, rather than being constrained by the need to constantly manage perception. The playful man in bed reveals something crucial about his emotional state. He trusts you enough to be imperfect. He values your shared experience enough that laughter doesn't threaten his masculinity or kill the mood. It enhances the intimacy by demonstrating that you're together in something authentic rather than performing separate fantasies. The man who remains grimly focused on technique, who cannot tolerate any breaking intensity, who treats the bedroom like a serious athletic event to be won, that man reveals lingering insecurity that deep love hasn't yet dissolved. He's still trying to prove something, still performing for judgment, still fundamentally alone in his head even while physically connected to you. But playfulness shouldn't be confused with lack of intensity or passion. The deeply loving man can shift seamlessly between gentle humor and overwhelming intensity, between soft affection and raw desire, because he's responding authentically to the moment rather than following a predetermined script. His playfulness emerges from security, not from lack of passion. In fact, the ability to be both playful and intensely passionate reveals the psychological freedom that only deep love creates, the confidence to simply be present with whatever emerges rather than forcing himself to maintain a particular persona. The fifth and perhaps most telling behavior involves what happens after physical intimacy concludes. Machiavelli taught that the period after achieving a goal reveals true character more reliably than the pursuit itself. How does someone act once they've gotten what they wanted? In intimate contexts, this becomes powerfully diagnostic. The man experiencing superficial attraction tends to mentally and physically withdraw once his immediate physical needs are satisfied. He might not leave immediately, but his attention shifts. He becomes distracted, reaches for his phone, gets up to do something else. The connection breaks because, for him, the connection was always instrumental, always a means to an end that has now been reached. But the deeply loving man behaves completely differently. He stays, not just physically remaining in bed, but remaining present, remaining connected, remaining engaged. He pulls you closer rather than creating distance. He continues touching you, not sexually necessarily, but in ways that maintain physical contact, as if breaking that connection would be uncomfortable. He wants to talk, to hear about your day, to share thoughts that surface in the vulnerable aftermath of intimacy. Or perhaps he simply wants to hold you in silence, feeling your breathing synchronized with his, experiencing the rare peace that comes from complete connection with another human being. This post-intimacy behavior reveals something profound about his psychological state. For him, physical intimacy wasn't a separate activity to be completed and moved on from. It was an expression of emotional connection that doesn't end just because the physical dimension has temporarily paused. Machiavelli observed that people reveal their priorities through how they allocate attention and time. The man who consistently lingers after intimacy, who prioritizes that connected space, who seems reluctant to re-enter the separated world of individual concerns, that man reveals that being with you matters more than any other demand on his attention in that moment. This pattern extends beyond the immediate aftermath. The deeply loving man references intimate moments in casual conversation later, not graphically or inappropriately, but in ways that show those experiences remain emotionally significant to him. He might mention how good you smelled, or how beautiful you looked, or how that moment made him feel so connected to you. These references demonstrate that intimacy leaves lasting emotional impressions rather than simply satisfying temporary physical needs. For him, the bedroom represents a space where something meaningful happens, not just a location where physical urges get addressed. Understanding these 5 behaviors requires stepping back to see the larger pattern they reveal. Machiavelli taught that human nature remains consistent even as contexts change. The principles that govern political behavior also govern intimate behavior because both emerge from the same fundamental psychological drives. What distinguishes deep love from attraction or infatuation isn't the presence of desire. It's the transformation of desire from something self-focused into something genuinely mutual. The deeply loving man experiences your pleasure as his pleasure, your comfort as his comfort, your vulnerability as sacred rather than exploitable. These behaviors cannot be permanently faked. They require too much consistent attention, too much moment-to-moment presence, too much genuine concern for another person's experience. Someone might manage to perform them occasionally, especially early in a relationship. But maintaining these patterns over time requires that they become automatic, flowing from genuine feeling rather than calculated strategy. Machiavelli's great insight was that actions reveal truth more reliably than words precisely because sustained action requires authentic motivation. Words are cheap and easily manipulated. Behavior patterns, especially in vulnerable contexts where maintaining pretense requires enormous effort, reveal what someone actually values and feels. If you recognize these 5 behaviors consistently in your own intimate relationship, if your partner slows down to savor moments rather than rushing toward completion, if he genuinely prioritizes your comfort without prompting, if he communicates openly and creates space for your honest expression, if he brings playfulness that reveals security rather than anxiety, if he stays present and connected after physical intimacy concludes, then you're experiencing something that extends beyond temporary attraction. You're witnessing behavioral evidence of deep emotional investment that cannot be manufactured through technique or strategy. But perhaps equally important is recognizing when these behaviors are absent. If intimacy consistently feels rushed, if your comfort seems peripheral to his satisfaction, if communication remains minimal or defensively rejecting of feedback, if seriousness never breaks for playful connection, if he withdraws immediately after physical needs are met, then regardless of what words he speaks, his actions reveal a different truth. Machiavelli would counsel you to believe the behavior pattern rather than the contradictory words, not out of cynicism, but out of respect for the reliable truth that consistent action reveals. These insights aren't offered to create unrealistic checklists or generate anxiety in good relationships. They're provided to help you recognize and value genuine love when you experience it, and to give you tools for distinguishing authentic connection from skilled performance. Because in a world full of advice about techniques and strategies for intimacy, what often gets lost is the simple truth that deep love transforms behavior naturally, not through effort or strategy, but through the fundamental shift that occurs when another person's well-being becomes as important to you as your own. If this resonated with you, if you recognize patterns in your own relationship or gain insights that might help you understand intimate connection differently, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. We explore human behavior, relationship dynamics, and the hidden wisdom found in unexpected places, always seeking to understand what actually drives human connection rather than repeating comfortable myths. And please, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do these observations match your experience? Have you noticed other behaviors that distinguish deep love from superficial attraction? Your insights help create a community where we learn from each other's experiences and build collective wisdom about what actually matters in human relationships.